so if you guys ever have any questions, I do a lot of informational and a lot of trapping videos on YouTube. I'm from southern Iowa, Sheraton, Iowa to be specific. And today my demo is going to be about multi-species trapping. So I'm going to cover several different things. I think it'll be a pretty interesting thing. If you guys have a question anytime, just say, hey, you know, here's my question, and we'll get our answer. So first off, based on the season, in Iowa we kick off the first weekend in November, and our regular season goes all the way through, well actually through February now, and you can trap everything. Like there's no set, you know, you can trap every animal. The only thing we have limits on is otter and bobcats. We're working on getting rid of those because we got a lot of otter and cats. So when the season kicks off, right out of the gate, typically I'm running a raccoon line in November. Because sometimes in the winter you freeze up and they den up, and I can hit them later in the breeding season if I want, but essentially the coon and everything run really well in November. So I'll run a raccoon line, and when I do that, I'm focusing on raccoon, but I'm one of those guys, I want to catch anything that's out there, right? And so I'll primarily run with 3 sets. I'll put snares in the back of my truck too. I'll have one tote with snares, one with 220 conibears because we can run them on dry ground in Iowa. 1.5s, a tote full of 1.5s, and a tote full of dogfish. I'm not just going to use one. I'm one of those guys, I want to run every set possible that I've got these base sets in my head. I want to run a well-diverse line, right? When I set for raccoon, it's just not a dog proof in the center of the trail and that's it. That's not me. If that's you, that's fine, like I said, but that's not me. I want it to be a diversified trap. So I load the truck up like that, and on my raccoon line, I look at the trails and the ditches. I know you guys can't trap ditches here, but one thing I do want to point out, I'm not trying to rub salt in wounds. You should still watch the ditches. Even though you can't trap in ditches, you can see how the animals travel with the ditches. That's how I learned growing up how to trap these animals. Just because you can't trap the ditches don't mean you can't trap the private side if you have permission on that. That fence line and that property, everything has to cross those roads, with the exception of a beaver, back in a pond or something, but they do travel dry ground too. Guys have got them on dry ground crossing ditches. So watch those ditches and see how you can transfer it over to your private ground. You should definitely be running that fence line along that side and on your private ground side, and you'll see the trails and how they go. But what changed the game for me, and I'm talking about November coon trapping right now, is when I realized that those coyotes and those bobcats were on the same trails as those coon are. When you start catching coyotes and bobcats on coon trails, you're like, okay, I'm onto something. So I run, like I said, a few sets. A dog proof, you put a dog proof, and I run them too. If you put a dog proof right on the edge of a coon trail, some guys run them in the center, I run them right on the side, and I keep my catch circle on the side there. But when you do that, you're going to catch coon, skunk, possum, a very rare occasional red fox. But that's it. That's what you're going to get, right? And then with 220s, I run those on H stands. Now what I do is I take that crap chain they put on all those 220s and I put a new chain on. And I put a swivel right at the conibear where it attaches, and I put a swivel and hook it to my H stand with a quick link. So I'm hooked there. It's all one unit. When I get out of that truck, I put in that set, put the 220 on, we're good to go. Now the thing is, H stands aren't super sturdy with, like if you hook into a big bobcat, and you can on those even on those small coon trails, he can pull that. That's fine. Now I've got this one unit, that H stand then is my drag. He's going to get caught up in the fence or brush or anything, and he's still going to be within 20 yards usually of where I catch him. And so that's how I run the conibears. But my number one set, and this is probably all year round, you can even run this when there's a little bit of snow, But it works better when there's no snow. But if there's a little bit of snow, you're still all right as long as it's not freezing and melting and refreezing. But it's the 1.5 blind set. And luckily, I grew up trapping in the 90s with my dad, and we didn't use lure back then, right? We didn't, like ever. And we would set all these coon trails, and when we learned that the 220s, we'd catch some cats, you'd even hook an occasional coyote with those 220s. Once we learned that you start putting 1.5 on the trail, you can catch anything. That really changed the game for us. And that's my favorite set, because every time I check traps, it's like Christmas. It's not just a dog proof in a trail, you're catching 3 species. This is, you catch everything. I've caught mink, I've caught otter, nowhere near water. Guys have even caught beaver with this set, and a 1.5 blind set on a coon trail, right? And so a lot of those trails we're looking at, they're not just coons. I call them coon trails. This isn't my trap. This is my good friend from New York. He left it in the back of my truck for my demos. If he's watching this, right, Jim? Anyways, he's a good friend of mine. And this is similar to a 1.5. I'm guessing it's a 2 or a 1 3/4. But anyways, his setup's a little different than mine. But same scenario. Main thing with a 1.5 blind set, if you guys run them, and I really suggest you try them because I think you'll love them, is no pan tension. No pan tension at all. So you got your floppy pan. You set your trap. You run your pan down to where it's what I call trigger hair set, where as soon as that animal touches. The reason you don't want pan tension is because this animal's not working a set. It's not working a set at all. It's just running. It's just running on its normal track. A lot of the rules don't apply when you're running a blind trail set. Another thing, and I'm glad you mentioned bed your trap, is always super important. This is where you can get away with some stuff on this. You still want to have your trap firm. Okay, so I'll do a little imitation here. We're going to say that this right here is just a standard coon trail. Okay, you're wanting your ditch, you're running from even a hollow tree to a creek or whatever. Okay, the beauty of this set is it's so fast to put in. The main thing is you keep your levers with the trail. You're not going to go side to side. And by keeping your levers with the trail, what you're doing is you're minimizing where they can step so it don't rock it side to side. You limit it down to just the pan, and everything else is kind of off the side tucked away. So this set, you'll find a narrow point, kind of a low point, and you go just like this here. Make sure it's solid, and then you cover up your chain a little bit. And I'll take some grass. Typically I'll have some grass or I have just used dirt just to break up the outline. What you're doing when you do that is not a lot. If you're using grass, don't use too much, because what'll happen is when it steps on it and you use a bunch of grass, it acts as a cushion. Okay, so you just want to use a few blades, just make sure you're breaking up the outline. And so now, that's how quick that set is right there. Now that animal's running that trail, and you see right there the potential of this set. Your miss rate is very low. He doesn't have to be hungry or even curious. These animals, they run almost every single night of the week, right? They're out there running road to road. They've got their own plans. They don't follow what we plan for them to do. With the dirt hole and all those other sets, I love them. And as a lure maker, I'm supposed to sell you a bunch of lure today, right? Truth of it is, if you run this set, you don't need any lure, guys. Now, one thing you can do, and I'm playing with it a little more, is now, I'll give you guys a scenario. So there was a bobcat that was hanging on this road. Everybody knew it was there. Everybody wanted to kill that bobcat. I didn't really care. It wasn't a big bobcat. It was a good sized male, I guess. But he wasn't huge. And it wasn't the time of year where they were really prime. But competitive me says, this is my cat now, right? Because all the other guys want it. They see it crossing the road. Nah, no, it's mine now. Because now I'm honing in on it because it's fun, right? Like, I love that. And it's nothing towards the other guys. I want them to do well too. But I kind of want to win. I like competition a little bit. So they say it's crossing this road at this point. And this is the kind of stuff that coming to conventions is going to give you guys top secret knowledge that a lot of times don't get talked about. It's crossing this road back and forth, different trails. And what it is there's a dead deer there that it's been eaten off of, right? And there's hunters that want to kill this cat. There's trappers looking at this cat, and I'm just one of the trappers. Now, how do I separate myself? How do I get that cat to go where I want it to? Well, it's pretty simple, really. There was this culvert down low, and I didn't want that cat to get stolen after I caught it too. Now this is in the ditch, but you can use this anywhere. You can use this mentality anywhere. I took some beaver castor and smeared it on the underside of the culvert. So every time that wind would blow, it funneled down that whole bottom. Very next morning, well, I guess I checked it at night. There's that cat. Everybody's like, how'd you do it? Well, it was a pretty simple thing. Really. I didn't tell all the guys there. I'm like, I don't know. I just put in some of my expert skills. No, guys, I just literally smeared a little castor so it blew right down the center of that area. When that cat's, even though he's thinking about eating deer, that dead deer, you can't tell me he's not going to check out beaver nowhere near water to smell the castor. He's like, they're a predator. He's like, here's an opportunity. There's got to be a beaver nearby. So he ran that culvert that very next time. And he had been running up high, too. Up high on those, it's like this huge draw. And he'd been running up high all those times that everybody was seeing him. And here I got him caught down here in the culvert, out of sight, out of mind. And so, anyways, essentially I was running a blind set, but I ran a smear lure, so technically it's no longer a blind set. But anyways, there's some things you can do like that. Trailing scents, to pull animals off of their usual travel, but you're not bait or luring right next to your set, so you've got them on the trail. And you can use that same concept. So then I don't know if it's a blind set, but it kind of is. So there's another scenario. So this is kind of how I run my November line, is a lot of blind setting and some tricks like that when I want to. But essentially I'm blind setting, besides my dog-proof traps, of course, right? And I fill those to the trigger. I do not fill them to the top. I see guys doing that. And as a bait lure salesman, I should say, yay, fill them to the top every time, overflow them bad boys. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. Guys talk about a raccoon working a set as a good thing. And a raccoon working a dog-proof is not a good thing to keep them there very long. You want to get them caught pretty quick. Reason being, a car could come by, a bigger predator could come along, right, and spook them. There's several things. You want to catch that coon right off the get-go. So I fill it to the trigger, and I put just very few pebbles on the ground, so they just get a little treat, and they reach in. First time they reach in, they get caught, right? I'm not there to feed them. I'm there to take them home, And the less I can feed them, the cheaper it is for me, and the faster I'm catching them when they're actually at the set. I don't want them working that dog-proof set for a long time, because then also they could wobble your steak. They could move that around. If you guys have ever, I've had the experience of handling coons that weren't wild. And if you ever see coons, even when you're drawing their attention, they're playing with their hands the whole time, touching things. Well, if you're keeping them at a dog-proof set very long, what they're doing is they're just moving that around, that dog-proof, without reaching down the hole. And what it's going to do is it's going to work your little steak loose. Once that happens, you're going to find your dog-proof laying on its side on the trail, not fired off. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not. You're not going to find a raccoon in the trap. So that's the concept there, is catch them quick. You're on location. And when I run my 220s on those trails, what's the little size you guys can run here on dry ground in Illinois? 220? Okay, so you guys know what I'm talking about. Little blocking goes a long ways. H-stand gets them up off the ground. I used to think with an H-stand you're not going to catch a mink until I was doing a nuisance job for otters. But the otters had already moved on, but they were going to come back around. Landowner said, hey, go ahead, keep it set. So I set a trail coming over the dam, the overflow trail. And that's one of the top locations, I believe, a trapper should ever set, not just for otter, but for cats, coyotes, everything. But anyways, I come there, it's spring, we had a snow. I had three or four 220s on that trail. I've got a nice, gorgeous skunk that jumped over into one, which, you know, it's kind of high for a skunk, but it jumped over right into it. Then I got a mink at the next one that jumped over into a 220. I'm lucky my triggers were set up right, or I wouldn't have had him. And then I think I had four 220s. I think I had two raccoon also, but every trap was full on that in one night on one pond dam trail going over the center. So that's the kind of success you can have with 220s. You can catch up to cats. But you know, a weird thing is a cat did go around all those one night, and he came back through, and he would not put his head through there. So, you know, food for thought there. So anyways, guys, that's my November raccoon line. Any questions about any of that? I know I kind of threw a lot at you pretty quick. Nope. Yep. In early November? That's a very good. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Most furs not good. You're right. Big boars, we're learning, are primed up early. Big boars, right? But you're right. Most raccoons not. Coyotes are. Coyotes are. If you guys ever, they're not as well furred on the belly. They're a hint thinner, but they do have prime fur in our first weekend in November. I'm not sure why they started that though, but I'm sure benefiting from it because then we've got so many animals and so few trappers that I'm just going to keep reaping the reward and say go DNR on that one. You know what I mean? So yeah, good question. What was your
I was
question?
going to ask you about the dog proofs.
Yep.
I never used one. I didn't know if you were going to show a demo how to put one out or.
You know, I didn't bring one today, but essentially I will talk you through the description. So a dog-proof trap is plain Jane out of the box, almost ready to go. Like you don't have to do anything to almost any brand of them, in my opinion. I've bought several. I think 7 or 8. I don't know how many brands of them I bought. Essentially, you pull them out of the box, they're ready to go. Now the thing is with them is they're all a squeeze type, and then you hook them. There's some that are a two-way trigger, so that's something to keep in mind. The Z-Trap is a two-way trigger system, so that's kind of nice because it's a push-pull, so it'll fire off when they're pushing too. Where the other ones are pull only. So, anyways, you get your dog-proof trap. It's ready to go out of the box. If I'm going to set that on a trail, what I'm going to do is I like to stake off the side, and this is where I used to catch some chaos with this. Like, why are you staking off the side? Stake right on the trail. No, because when guys are driving down the roads in Iowa, we're trapping the ditches. Guys are looking. You see a big circle in the middle of a coon trail. You know there's a trap. You want to steal it. It's right there, right? So what I do is I stake to the side. So if I put my dog proof, this is my coon trail. If I put my dog proof right there, I'm staking over here to the side, keeping my catch circle off the side of these weeds, right? But that coon's still not going to go by my trap. And I put it right here on the edge. I don't put it in the dead center because if a deer runs that trail, and deer will run coon trails. I've snared them on coon trails and had to release them. With loops this high, so don't think I'm out there trying to snare deer. But anyways, I'll put it on the side of the trail right here so deer don't step on it. I'll fill it to the trigger, right? And I'll put just a few pebbles in front. That's what I do. And like I mentioned earlier, it's because I don't want to feed them, I want to catch them, right? I don't want them to work that set very long. I want them to just get a taste and reach down and snap off first time. You will have problems with mice stealing later in the season. There's some tricks I can get into about that, but it's like a whole nother topic. But if you, I'm No Name Trapper on YouTube, so if you ever have any questions, you can go on the YouTube channel and just comment. I'll help you any way I can. But that's how I run my dog proof. But another important part with dog proof, make sure when you put that trap in, guys, that it stakes solid. If that ground's not solid, if it wobbles a little bit, those raccoons, they get to feel them with their hands, even when they're not paying attention to the set. Let's say they hear another coon down the trail, they're still moving their hands on your trap. So what it does is it works it loose. And then what a lot of guys will have this problem, and I used to have it back when I started running dog proofs. You'll find your dog proof laying there on the trail, usually not fired off, and the bait still some of it in it. And what it did was it sat there and worked it, and that stake moved in, so it pulled it out. And then the food actually just fumbled out onto the ground, and it just ate it and then walked on. Okay, so make sure it's staked solid, and like I said, I'm staking the trap off the side of my trap.
When you say stake solid, when you talk about the stake over there, is there a stake with the dog proof too?
Okay, so when you buy a dog proof, there's not. Which you can either run like a rebar stake or like a pogo. Like I run pogos in November when I'm coon trapping, then I run wolf fangs. They're disposable stakes that you can buy that are cables. You have to have a driver for them. And
I think he's talking about the one on the bottom.
oh yeah, okay, I got you. Sorry again, not my setup on my trap. But yeah, this is a wolf fang right here on this. But my friend put that on there. The only dog proof I think that comes with one is the No BS dog proof, I think. And they've got the long chain like this too. But then all you gotta have is a driver. But yeah, you gotta drive that about 18, 24 inches in the ground, and that's your stake. If not, you'll have to use rebar, or like I do, I don't have any probably in my bucket here today. I've got some snares, of course, but not them. But anyways, I make cable ones at home myself. Same concept, except I've got a quick link. This will be cable, and I'll have a quick link that'll attach to your swivel on your trap, so you can hook together there. I like it as a two-part system. Matter of fact, the No BS ones, no offense to Kendall, he makes great traps. I don't like that long a chain, and sometimes you get in our clay in Iowa, and you can't pull that trap like you can. You have to cut the chain. So what I did was I went through and I just put my own system, right? So it's a two-piece thing, and I attach with a quick link. But yeah, you want to stake off to the side, in my opinion, and you want to stake it down 18 to 24 inches. And then when I say staking your DP on the trail, it's got that little prong. You want to make sure that's solid. You don't want that any play in that. Okay. Any other questions on the November raccoon? Nope. Okay. So now we're going to move into later in the season when I'm running my predator line. And when I say predator line, I'm primarily referring to like bobcats and coyotes. We're talking late November, December, January. Now, again, I like to run for multiple species at the same time. So while those are my target animals, I might be trapping some raccoon if the weather's right, or anything that's out there. If I see muskrat runs in a pond nearby, I'm going to go ahead and take them too. So late season, you look in the back of my truck, you're going to find I've got either Bridger 2s or Bridger 2s or Duke 550s, or a tote of 650s and number 3s also next to it, and then a tote of snares, right? And the reason is I'm going to run for everything out there. Then I'm going to have one more tote that's 1 3/4 blind set for blind sets. That's if the weather conditions are stable for it. Like I said, a blind set like this on a coon trail, it'll survive one little snow if it melts back off. But if you have freezing and, if it keeps freezing and unfreezing and thawing out, it won't fire off correctly. Okay, so I'll keep those 1 3/4 for my predator line in the back of my truck, just in case the weather is good enough for them. So, predator line, what I'm looking for is I'm running, and again, I know you guys can't run ditches, but I'm telling you, those coyotes got to cross on the other side onto the private ground. So remember, when you're running those ditch lines, when you're driving to your spot, your private ground, as soon as you pull in, you should be making a run right down that road on that side of your property, because those coyotes and cats and everything is still crossing. So don't think you have to go to the back of the 40 to catch all this stuff. Those animals are still crossing right on that main line. So I'll run blind sets with the 1 3/4, or I'll run a snare. And with my snares, it's a pretty simple system too. So what I'll do with those is I've got a quick link on them. And then I attach to a wolf fang. I use wolf fangs late season because they penetrate the ground better than my pogo system. My pogos are rounded, so it's kind of hard to get them started, is the only reason. So I'll attach the wolf fangs, and I run a 3/32 7x7 snare. And to go through all the details with you, we'd spend a little bit of time. But anyways, I like what I consider a slow snare, and a lot of guys will say I'm a little bit crazy, but when I'm trapping coyotes, I like what I consider a slow snare. So again, if this was, what I consider a coon trail, and then sometimes there's what I consider a predator trail. And you can see these not just in ditches, you can see these on private ground. If you look in the field corners, you can see not the ones that are blazed down like deer trails, but there'll be a very subtle brushing of the grass where you can tell something's been coming through, but it hasn't beat down the surface of the dirt. That's because your coyotes don't come through as often, and when they do, they're not as heavy-footed as deer. So a predator trail won't be as obvious sometimes, but they're still there on private ground. And what usually travel them specifically is cats and coyotes. Like, you'll typically not run into deer or even raccoon at some of those trails. So if you ever see that trail and it just looks like the grass is parted, there's no beat down area underneath, that could be your coyote trail right there.
Yeah, I'm just scared on land in Illinois.
Can you use the,
In water, absolutely.
but can you use the,
Relaxing.
yeah, the
No.
cable restraints? You can't use cable restraints either, so you can't use
Water only.
water only.
Yeah.
Wow, they cripple you guys with that.
I know.
So if you guys ever go out of state, right like that, okay? Just a hint of blocking on this side.
That high?
Yeah, yeah. For that right there, will catch your coyotes and cats. Now, with that being said, I've seen coyotes that are quite a bit taller. I've got coyotes as
Really?
yeah, as tall as that. And I actually caught a cat a few years ago that was this tall. My snare was made for a coyote like this, and I hooked in the biggest cat I ever seen. Sold to a taxidermist down in Texas. That was a big cat. Yeah, I was. But anyway, so you guys can't run snares, so I'm not going to show you too much of that. But that's essentially how you do it. You put a little blocking on that side, and don't think you can't go out of state, guys. If you ever want to have a little fun, there's nothing wrong with jumping one little border to get over there.
So, are you not allowed to run snares in Illinois, or?
Yes, no snares in Illinois except in water, half submerged. Yeah, they really pinched you guys. I'm sorry about that. Yep, no, so that's okay. Then we'll use I can run the same blind set on those same trails as long as it's not snowing a lot. The same blind set that I showed you guys for coon. That's why I carry those 1 3/4 traps in the back of my truck, is because I do the same thing on those trails. So just because if you see that predator trail, you can still put this foothold in. The main thing to remember is a lot of guys get to where they think coyotes they're a bigger animal, right? But if you watch them run, they run just as narrow as a raccoon does. Same with the bobcat. They've got a very narrow run line. So you can run that same blind set, just like I do for raccoon, that will catch your coyotes and catch your cats. So if you see one of those predator trails, just because you guys can't use snares, doesn't mean you can't throw one of those on that trail. And you'd be surprised how many times you'll hook your cats and coyotes in those. And again, they don't have to be hungry, so you know they're traveling that trail anyway. So if they go past your baited dirt hole over here, they're still going to run past. You guys see it. You were talking. You put up trail cams. How many times do you see a coyote or cat just run right by sets and stuff because they're not interested? Well, a blind set, they don't have to be. And you get a nice deep catch with this set too, guys. That's what's also nice. You get a nice deep. They come down. They step on that pan. It's a pretty lights out kind of deal. So
You don't have trouble with blowing that little trails apart?
nope.
Yeah.
I have caught some of the biggest coyote I've ever caught in 1.5s, and they hold me. Yep. Now, with that being said, not every trap's built the same, and I'm not going to say that you'll have that same 1.5 for use after hooking into a big coyote. But if you get the right brands, you might. Like No BS makes a fantastic 1.5. Now with those, I prefer the laminated jaws over the double jaw with the No BS because of the size of the pan. The size of the foot, if you look between your jaw and your pan, it's a very narrow gap with a bigger pan like that. So I want it laminated on the outside and keep that double jaw gap open between there and the pan. But anyways, yeah, you can catch any animal in 1.5, at least that I've ran into in southern Iowa, with the exception of probably a mountain lion, and we are getting a couple of those now. instead of so that's my blind set. But then also I'll run. I've got my predator bag in the truck, right? Because I'm running for everything. So just so I have, because I have the reason to run the blind sets and the snares off on this side, I've still got my 2s and 3s or my 550s and 650s. And there's a lot of predator sets I could show you guys today. But I'm going to show you one of the, probably the dumbest, best ones that I love, and I love it for bobcats, okay? And I don't talk about it a lot because I kind of keep it hush-hush, but and we talked about how cats and coyotes don't understand the backing on your trap sometimes. Sometimes, believe it or not, if you put trail cams on them, videos on them, they'll walk right over your back. Now, with that being said, if I've got tall grass here, like very tall grass, this is one of my favorite sets, especially near ponds for bobcats. Ponds and water and brush. If you've got like a trail or something, like a drive-in trail, you know, and this is tall grass right here. One of my favorite sets for cats, and I'll use a 1/2 inch thick rebar, and I'm not going to be able to show you it as well as I would in hard ground.